So today I will be covering the topic of anabolic steroid usage and the governance of this controlled substance within the professional sports league. So because the federal law prohibits anabolic steroids in Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act, all leagues must abide by this within the space. This came into effect in 1991, so that means that all athletes before then, which there were a lot of them who were just notorious for using steroids, were able to get away with it and did not come clean about the issue until they wrote books about it or until they went to court like 10 years later, which I will go over in this topic. Most steroid users experience termination of contracts as of now because Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act was created in 1991. And along with that, sponsorships and all other bindings are usually terminated once they violate this. So let's kind of backtrack to what even are anabolic steroids and what do they do. So in sum, anabolic steroids are just a man-made version of testosterone, which, as we know, is the male hormone, and it increases your muscle mass and your strength. So that is why athletes really jump the gun on it and really take advantage of it because they're able to build muscle very quickly. If steroids were permitted in sports, our view of winners, best players, and natural talent would be skewed. So think of all of the athletes that are enabled scholarships every year and granted tons of money to go to school. If everyone was just on anabolic steroids, we would not have natural talent to think. We would simply think steroids. The whole base of what I am trying to say and my argument is because the federal law placed anabolic steroids in Schedule 3 of the Controlled Substances Act in 1991, any sports professional should be terminated from the team for having an unfair advantage in the game because it's classified as a controlled substance. And in addition to my other argument is that this drug should be treated as an equal to every other controlled substance with no exceptions. So after a athlete is guilty of violating the Controlled Substances Act in any way, I think that they should all be treated equally, and I have a lot of examples that we will go over in the next slides that prove that the majority of sports league leaders think the same. So kind of going back to what are they, why are they used? According to Medline, most bodybuilders and athletes use steroids to build muscles to improve their performance. We've seen it in a lot of runners. MLB has just been so notorious. A spokesperson had to come out and really address the issue, and it was more of them neglecting the topic of saying it wasn't a real problem, but it is very obvious that it is a real problem because there has been countless MLB players to be guilty of violating the Substance Control Act, specifically Schedule 3. So the problem is that the doses that athletes are taking are 10 to 100 times higher than doses used to treat medical conditions, and they're using them in a way without a prescription, so it's not legal or safe. And kind of going back to that, if men have hormonal balances or problems with building testosterone, steroids are given to them, but it is administered through a healthcare provider, not necessarily them getting it off the street or getting it from somebody who is not a licensed medical professional. But going back to what I just stated, the doses that athletes are taking are 10 to 100 times higher, so it's very dangerous and very hard on the organs. Because steroids are used by athletes are often 10 to 100 times higher than medical use, they are considered dangerous and offer horrible side effects like acne, kidney, and other organ damage. The Diverse Control Division has stated that the International Olympic Committee, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, which is simply the NCAA, better known, and many professional sports leagues, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, football leagues, the NFL, and the NHL, which is hockey, have all banned the use of steroids by athletes because this came into effect in 1991. So without this law, they would be able to get away with using steroids, and all media contracts and scholarships would simply be based on who has better access to steroids, in my opinion. A lot of leagues have banned the use of steroid precursors, which are different types of androgen builders, which is simply a testosterone builder. So it's just a precursor to steroids in addition to anabolic steroids. But it's for the same reason that steroids were banned. So there's so many different types of steroids. Sometimes it can be really hard to detect which ones have been taken unless you do a urine sample. And still then sometimes it's hard to differentiate which ones, because sometimes people go to the doctor and they get a steroid shot, which can help with inflammation and severe pain. And then there are androgen steroids, which are just simply androgen builders, which is testosterone builders. The IOC and professional sports leagues use urine testing to detect steroid use both in and out of competition. And according to the National Drug Awareness Program, anabolic steroids are synthetically produced variants of natural occurring male hormone testosterone. Both males and females, which sometimes people don't realize that females have testosterone as well, are produced in both genders. They're just produced in different locations of the body. So let's go to the whole base of what this project is about. It is the Controlled Substances Act. The Controlled Substances Act is the blueprint that the government regulates. It's how they regulate the possession and distribution of controlled substances. So this is not just anabolic steroids. This could be meth, marijuana, any controlled substance. Going back to my argument, because they placed anabolic steroids in the Controlled Substances Act, now steroids need to be equivalent to the controlled substances that we see so much in the news, which are cocaine, party drugs, etc., etc. The federal government classifies various plants, drugs, and chemicals such as narcotics, stimulants, depressants, hallucinogens, and anabolic steroids as a controlled substance, which means that if a baseball player that has been awarded with 10 contracts gets accused and pleads guilty to the use of anabolic steroids, it should be taken just as much as a narcotic, a stimulant, depressant, or hallucinogen. The Controlled Substances Act was created in 1991 to regulate certain substances because the media was really gaining traction on these sports leagues that were allowing men particularly to take steroids and have such an unfair advantage, which would just give them so much more money from contracts, which we've also talked about in this course. Whereas really, that's really where their money comes from anyways. So now that this law was introduced, it's more of basing where the money goes on natural ability. So laws covering the use of steroids. We have the Anabolic Steroids Control Act of 1990, which was placed and taken into full effect in 1991, but it rolled out in 1990. And that is when they put the anabolic steroids into the Schedule 3 of the Substance Control Act.